So Lauren, I started off talking about some of the things that were happening in the news this week around cloud and some of the premise-based decisions and off-premise-based decisions. I was listening to a podcast this morning. It was Software Engineering Daily, and earlier in the week we had spoken actually on Slack, and we were talking a little bit about, as a team, this article that A16Z had written where they were talking about, hey, there's some significant cost to organizations as they consider where they're going to be putting their infrastructure, where they're going to be putting some of their applications. And I really like this article from A16Z. It was kind of a cost of goods sold approach, right? So what they did is they didn't talk a lot about tech. They talked a lot about, hey, we're looking towards this cost of goods sold, and then they started talking through what's it affecting, and it turns out it's affecting for large public software companies. So a very specific use case, right? It's affecting their ability to take their margins and reinvest them elsewhere. And I thought what was really kind of interesting about this was, hey, they kind of did the homework, and there's like these graphs in there where they're plotting out, you have this much extra cash that you could go out and invest in new software features or new services for your customers, et cetera, et cetera. And I think then there were a number of other articles that kind of spun out of that I was reading. One was by Nirian. He's responsible for service mesh over in our Tanzu portfolio, right? And then there was another article that I think Marjorie had posted, a leader in our multi-cloud solutions organization. And just a lot of discussion overall. And I know you're particularly well-versed in like this background of cloud costs. You've been writing about it, you've been blogging about it. It's been something that you're really interested in. And I wanted to kind of ask yourself to introduce yourself, understand a little bit about kind of your perspective. It'd be cool if you could share an outcome where you've kind of looked through the data, a customer's made a decision or optimized, et cetera, et cetera. And then we can get into some other details as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great, interesting topic that's top of mind for everyone right now that has a stake in the cloud. So just a brief introduction is that my name is Lauren Vandervaart, and I am privileged to be on Sudesh's team on the multi-cloud team at VMware. And in particular, I'm coming from the Cloud Health organization. So Cloud Health was a company that was acquired by VMware in 2018, and we focus primarily on public cloud management and optimization of your financial management, operations, performance, and then security and compliance. So cloud cost is definitely a key area of interest of mine. And so to your point, I think that article that you pointed out in particular was very interesting, and I think we can drop it in the chat as well so everyone can take a look at it. But it's looking at the cost of cloud, and we've had this conversation too before, Sudesh, about can you actually reduce your cloud costs? And I think there's that challenge there of, if you're investing in the cloud, inevitably you're probably going to be seeing increasing cloud spend year over year, but there are ways to optimize how you're spending that. So you're making sure that you're putting it in the areas that will return on your investment. So it's delivering, whether that's, increasing delivery times and development times, or, bringing product to the market faster, making sure that your spend is going somewhere and it's being utilized to give that return on an investment. And I think that's what our focus is, as well as identifying those areas for customers, and then how we can best optimize them for them. And in particular, I would say with Cloud Health, we were looking at a lot of customers during COVID. So spend changed significantly. We, have been and I'm seeing in the chat, yes, I'll drop it in right now because I'm looking at it for the article. So hopefully you're able to see that. But I would say to that point is during COVID, customers were either having to increase depending on their market and their industry. They're either having to significantly increase cloud spend because the demand from their customers and from their business was astronomically higher. And I'm thinking in particular with retail, grocery stores, people needing different types of resources and services than they hadn't needed before in higher amounts and quantities and faster. So those organizations, we were seeing a high amount of increased cloud spend. In other cases, organizations that were investing heavily in the cloud needed to really take into consideration reducing those costs because just the limitations that COVID had and the impact that it had on their business in particular. So it was one company in particular that I'm thinking of that we worked with, Toast, and their digital organization, and we worked with them on optimizing their cloud costs, particularly during COVID, without limiting their performance. So a lot of times if you're spending attention on reducing costs, it can limit your performance and services. And so that's really why working with different organizations to help optimize in different tools and services can really, thanks for dropping that case study in there, can help take the load off and make sure you're optimizing without losing that performance.
Nice. So, I think one of the other things that I'm taking away from this is that as cloud services are quickly adopting patterns, and I like, for me, what's hard is like something like AWS or GCP or Azure. They're releasing services every day. Those services may be something that a customer wants to look at, but it's really kind of understanding what's the appetite for consumption for those next programs, projects, and what's the appetite for optimization. Because, even though these services are being released at a rapid pattern, it doesn't necessarily mean that you want to go out and, try that service immediately for your enterprise organization. And so that there's this whole other thing that, as I was kind of tossing around the webs this morning, I thought was really interesting. And there's an article out there that that somebody wrote where they were kind of comparing, and this is me geeking out a little bit. They were comparing the Dungeons and Dragons to all of the AWS services. And I feel like this is kind of a really healthy way for organizations to think about, well, what makes sense for adoption? What doesn't make sense? And, this goes back to a little bit of where is all the data being produced? Where is all the data being consumed? What are the applications that are kind of the core applications of record? And I really kind of enjoyed the way that they wrote the article, because it kind of took you through things like, so where are all of those services for data storage, right? And what makes sense in your use case? And I think what's interesting about kind of this discussion taking place now, right, is if you go back and you look 10 years ago, when cloud providers were designing all of their infrastructure, they got to a point where they figured out, you know what? We're going to go create our own switches. We're going to go create our own routers. We're going to go create our own servers. And we're not going to be in the enterprise market for any of that stuff. We're going to kind of insource all of it. And I think as organizations kind of develop their patterns for consumption, understanding what the true cost of the organization might be is really important, and really also optimizing for day two operations. Because once you have these things adopted, it's really tough to figure out, well, how many folks are supporting this, and what happens when we move workloads back and forth, or what happens when we decide we want to add a new entirely platform, right? I guess in my head, I look at a company like Salesforce being a great example, where right now a lot of teams just look at Salesforce and they see just a company that provides CRM and analytics software. But I could really see them becoming another cloud platform in a couple of years, and just another place that technology leaders are going to have to say, well, am I going to be deploying workloads out to Salesforce? Like, is that something that might happen in the future? I could certainly see that happening, right? And then your operating model has to change around a lot of that stuff. And I think, this is kind of the goal of CloudStream, right? Is to have these discussions about, well, what are we seeing out in the marketplace? Bring awareness to our VMware community, as well as new folks that are starting to learn and listen, and also be able to take advantage of, what are some of the keys that we might be able to sort of push out overall for organizations, and we really kind of, in my head, we bring those into people, process, technology domains, and we're then able to sort of overall kind of optimize for those domains. Now, there was another kind of good article out there as well, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. There was this article out there about what is the KPI for cloud? Like, what is this key performance indicator for cloud? And I know Cloud Health has lots of dashboards, lots of stuff in it that allows customers to focus in. But I'd be interested to hear, Lauren, your opinion. Is there a key performance indicator that a lot of organizations gravitate towards that you've seen where this measure makes a lot of sense? Is there an area that you start with as an organization where you start to focus and kind of get, to this one key area, and then you're like, hey, from that key area, we can change behavior, we can optimize, we can make the decisions around repatriation? Do you feel like that's first we got to figure out our organizational structure, or do you think it's more, simpler than that? You just got to get all your cloud bills together in one place, and then all of a sudden, you're going to start having that discussion. I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts there.
Yeah, I love the idea of bringing up KPIs, and I think you touched on people, process, and technology too. So there's a lot of different KPIs that people can track. But one thing that I think is foundational is that before heading out on your cloud optimization, you might be midstream already, but I think it's very critical to align your cloud KPIs and what you're tracking with your business KPI. So if, looking first at what your business's goals are, and then aligning that to your cloud strategy. So that can help you take the next step appropriately and make sure that you're all aligned and not have to backtrack, and making sure that the entire organization is aligned on those things. So you're not in silos with, okay, but our cloud managers are doing this and our developers are doing this and they're looking at these tracking, but our business really wants to move us forward in this way. So, one of the best practices that we promote is having whatever you choose to call it, a cloud center of excellence, a cloud management office that brings in those key stakeholders, whether it's the lines of business, your key stakeholders in the cloud, and your IT services that you use in your organization to make sure that you're aligned on those KPIs and where you're spending, and then the activities that you're doing in that way. And then from there, I would say, we look at KPIs. We touched on this earlier, but not just as a number of, security, for example, if you're looking at security and compliance, not just how many, misconfigurations were prevented before turning into an incident, but looking at that as a percentage, so ratios, and then tracking that over time. Are we improving on how we're identifying misconfigurations, or are we getting worse? Or what are the different steps? And I think that really can provide more education to your organization and your team on the best, where to take the next step to make sure that you are optimizing, whether that's like security, cost, or performance and operations.
Nice. Now, part of this is letting folks know a little bit about who powers, VMware, right? So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. So get ready. All right. So the first one is 3 minutes. What is your favorite thing that runs on a cloud? This could be a professional or personal thing that runs on a cloud. and explain what cloud and how it works, if you know how it works. Do you have a favorite cloud service that you use of some sort?
Oh, if I know which cloud provider they use, is that what you're asking?
Well, no, I mean, it could be that they're, one I hear a lot, like folks, whenever I ask this question, they tell me Peloton. Like they love that experience, right? They love being able to get on the bike and then, be interacting, and they know all of it runs on the clouds and they have no idea how it works, but they're just, they welcome the magic that's coming. Yeah.
Okay, that's a good example. I do like Peloton. I think it's a good model. I would say, and speaking of that note, I like to be a very active person, and so I'm going to use an example that I have, but there we go, get it in the screen. But I use a Garmin watch.
Okay.
And so I think that technology, it's really fun for me to track. I'm kind of stealing your example with Peloton, but it hosts your data and it connects to my phone at the same time. So I can see that it, communicates with it. So whether I'm on my watch, it's just automatically goes straight to my phone. And from there, I can track what I'm doing, how much activity I'm doing, what my friends are doing. I can connect to other people, do challenges, and I can also see where I am too. It's a little bit more accurate. Sometimes that can be a little like, ooh, it can see where I am, but just with the GPS, it's pretty accurate now with how far you're going, and you can see where your friends are and the different routes that they've taken as well on runs or walks. And I think that's really fun and interesting to me. So that's a little bit
gamified. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and gamification, it really can. That's a key topic for the cloud too. It's like how can you gamify your teams to improve costs and incentivize them to take that into consideration while they're working in their daily jobs too. So yeah.
So do you know how Garmin created their user experience?
I hope you have the answer, because I'm curious.
I love, this is one of the reasons I'm so excited about streaming, is being able to tell some of these stories. So first off, I'll pop the URL in there. If you go out and Google Tanzu and Garmin, you can see the customer use case that's out there. But really, Garmin had a huge challenge when they went and started to create this user experience that you were just talking about. Like, hey, it's a fun game. I see it. It's all integrated. And that's how do they integrate the back ends of these different platforms together, right? They did that with what is now Tanzu Labs, right? So they went and had a design engagement and kind of put that together. And there's a cool video out there as well about the pioneering of that software and creating that software. So I'm always really excited about sort of things like that. Here's the URL for that. And I then have to ask you, what are you working on now that you're really excited about? This can be a personal project, professional project. I'm getting a first-person drone so that I can put on 3D goggles and fly that around. Neighbors are going to love it. They are going to be super excited.
Okay, so I actually haven't heard of a first. Can you compare the difference between I know a regular remote control drone, but what's a first person drone?
So it's basically, I don't know if you're aware of Oculus Quest, which is that thing you put on your face and then you can kind of be in a VR gaming. So it is a gaming headset, but you're flying through the air like you're an airplane kind of. Does that effectively? So you're able to navigate with this first person headset. So that's kind of where my where my next fun project will be.
That's awesome. And now I'm putting my nerd hat on, but I am a big Avengers fan, and it reminds me of in the Black Panther when they're driving essentially in those things that move in the air, but they're just sitting within a car. So I don't know if that relates at all, but it reminds me.
Good example. Yeah, it definitely relates. I like it. Well, what are you going to be working on anything fun in the upcoming quarter that you're like, hey, this is some interesting stuff or interesting research, or are you just going to be painting rooms in your house? Or what are you looking forward to in the next 3 months?
Yeah, that's on the personal front for sure. But I think we have a lot of exciting stuff on the VMware side, and recently coming over from Cloud Health specifically. I'm still working with that team, but more into the multi-cloud. There's so many solutions that we have and different unique services that I'm really excited to kind of dip my toes into. So similar to this stream that we have here, we're running live demos on a live stream channel on our VMware Cloud YouTube channel. So that's been really fun for us to kind of explore and learn a little bit more myself about those different products and what you can do and how it can help you optimize your business. But I'm also excited to kind of dive deeper into our public cloud providers and our partners that we work with. So AWS, Azure, GCP, I'm always kind of interested in seeing how the cloud market landscape is tracking, and is Azure going to take over? Where is GCP coming up in the ranks? And so I'm excited to dive a little bit deeper into the different services that they offer. They're changing constantly, and it's something that you have to keep an eye on almost daily because of the different changes that they have. But that's a unique interest of mine that I'm hoping to provide more insights for the cloud community and for our customers as well, so to help them make the best choice of if they're choosing private, public, staying on-prem, wherever they're choosing to have their services and their applications and workloads, providing that information for them so that they can make the most educated choice. So I'm kind of, taking that on more from the public cloud provider space that I'm interested in exploring more.
Yeah, and I know we do have VMworld coming up, so I'm super excited about some of the great announcements we're going to be making there. And no spoilers yet until somebody lets me have spoilers, which will be fun. And then there's one other thing that I wanted to mention. We're getting towards the end of our time here, and that is on next week's show, we're going to have a guest speaker from industry, and they are going to speak a little bit about the transformation that they've experienced in their career. Because one of the other things that I want to do with CloudStream is help others build their careers and make the steps towards what's next for them. I think what's really challenging for us being in tech is that it changes so quickly. We're constantly having to think about what's the right next step for us. How do we grow? How do we invest in our education? And how do we get to the next rung in our ladder? So that'll be a really cool discussion. And Lauren, I just want to thank you so much for joining today, and I look forward to having you back when you've got some exciting new stuff to talk about. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.